Why do you wake up in the morning already defeated? Why, even before you open your eyes, is your mind already captured by impulses you can't control? Why does modern man, with all his technology and knowledge, live more enslaved than ever before? Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who advised emperors and confronted the deepest questions of human existence, left us with a brutal truth. It is not external circumstances that enslave us, but our inability to master the desires that dwell within us. Today, as you navigate life believing you are free, a primitive and powerful force is silently eroding your will, fragmenting your attention, stealing your vital energy, and transforming you into a ghost of the person you were meant to be. This force has a name: uncontrolled sexual desire. And no, I'm not talking about sex as an expression of love or deep human connection. I'm talking about that blind compulsion, that uncontrollable need that makes you seek instant gratification, that drags you into the abyss of pornography, compulsive masturbation, the desperate search for pleasure without purpose. Have you ever wondered why, after each episode of compulsive sexual gratification, you feel emptier than before? Why, instead of satisfied, you feel diminished, as if an essential part of your life force has been drained? Seneca knew this truth 2,000 years ago. Lust is not merely a vice, it is a form of slow suicide of the soul. We live in an era where sexual pleasure has been transformed into a commodity, a product for immediate consumption. Pornography is available at a click, masturbation is normalized as tension relief, and modern culture convinces us that repressing desires is psychologically harmful. But what society doesn't tell you is that there's an abysmal difference between repressing a desire and transcending it through understanding and conscious discipline. The primitive man living within you hasn't changed since ancestral times. He still operates with the same basic impulses: survival, reproduction, domination. But here's the problem: you no longer live in the wild where these impulses had a clear evolutionary function. You live in a complex reality where success depends on mental discipline, sustained focus, directed energy, and conscious presence. When you allow the primitive man to govern your sexual life, you're trying to run advanced software with outdated hardware. Seneca observed that the man who is a slave to his pleasures is less free than the one who wears physical chains. Why? Because the physical slave knows he is bound and can dream of freedom. But the slave of pleasure believes he is free and therefore never seeks liberation. He confuses compulsion with choice, addiction with freedom, impulse with will. Sexual energy is, undoubtedly, one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It is the energy that creates life, that drives creation, that generates passion and intensity. But like all power, it can be used to build or to destroy. When not understood and consciously directed, it becomes a destructive force that erodes your masculinity, your mental clarity, your capacity for achievement, and your connection to the greater purpose of existence. Think about this. How many times have you had a brilliant idea, an inspiring project, a clear vision of what you wanted to achieve, and then, after an episode of compulsive sexual gratification, found that all that creative energy had dissipated? How many times have you felt like you could conquer the world in the morning, but by evening, after giving in to impulses, you felt like an ordinary man, without strength, without purpose, without magnetism? This is no coincidence. It's a universal law that Seneca understood deeply. Energy is one, but it can manifest in different forms. The same energy you waste on compulsive sexual gratification is the energy that could be transmuted into creative genius, into power of achievement, into personal magnetism, into penetrating mental clarity. The process that Napoleon Hill called sexual transmutation is not sexual repression. It is internal alchemy. It is the art of recognizing the sexual impulse as a manifestation of primordial creative energy and, instead of wasting it on immediate gratification, channeling it for higher purposes. It is transforming the lead of primitive desire into the gold of conscious realization. Observe the great men of history, Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton, all of them understood, intuitively or consciously, that sexual energy, when transmuted, becomes extraordinary creative force. They did not deny their sexual nature, but elevated it to a higher level of expression. They transformed the fire of sexual passion into the fire of creative passion. But how does this work in practice? How can you transform such a primitive and powerful force into something elevated and constructive? Seneca teaches us that the first step is brutal and honest awareness. You need to recognize that whenever you give in to compulsive sexual impulse, you are making a choice. It's not something that happens to you, it's something you allow to happen. The second step is to understand that every compulsive sexual desire is in fact a symptom of something deeper. It is the manifestation of emotional voids, unmet needs, aspects of the personality that you have not yet integrated. When you seek pornography, you are not just looking for physical pleasure. You are looking for connection, power, validation, escape from reality, relief from anxiety, compensation for unresolved frustrations. Compulsive masturbation, for example, is rarely about physical need. It is about emotional and psychological need. It is a form of self-medicating against depression, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, the feeling of powerlessness in the face of life. When you understand this, you can begin to address the real causes instead of just treating the symptoms. The fourth step is the practice of conscious presence. Seneca constantly spoke about the importance of living in the present moment, of being fully aware of our thoughts, emotions, and impulses. When you feel a sexual impulse arise, instead of reacting automatically, you can observe it with scientific curiosity. Where does this impulse come from? What triggered it? What emotional need is behind it? This practice of conscious observation is in itself a form of transmutation. You are taking the impulse from the realm of the unconscious and bringing it into the realm of consciousness. And everything that becomes conscious can be directed and transformed. The fourth step is active channeling. When you feel sexual energy arise, instead of wasting it on compulsive gratification, you can channel it into creative, physical, or intellectual activities. You can use this energy to exercise with more intensity, to write with more passion, to work with more focus, to create with more inspiration. Many men report that when they begin practicing sexual transmutation, they experience a dramatic increase in vital energy, mental clarity, confidence, and personal magnetism. This is not magic, it is energetic physics. It is the same energy that was previously wasted being redirected for constructive purposes. But here is the crucial point that Seneca emphasized. This practice is not about becoming a sexual ascetic. It is about becoming a master of your own energy. It is about moving from the state of sexual slave to the state of sexual sovereign. The man who masters his sexual energy is not one who denies it completely, but one who expresses it consciously, with purpose, with intention, with love. When you have sexual relations motivated by love, connection, and conscious intention, you are using your sexual energy in an elevated way. When you masturbate because you are bored, anxious, depressed, or addicted to pornography, you are wasting your sexual energy destructively. The difference is not in the act itself, but in the consciousness, intention, and purpose behind the act. Seneca teaches us that freedom is not the absence of limitations, but the ability to consciously choose our limitations. When you develop sexual self-mastery, you are not limiting yourself, you are liberating yourself. You are moving from a state of unconscious reactivity to a state of conscious choice. And here I pause to invite you to a deep reflection. If this content is resonating with your soul, if it is awakening something dormant within you, if it is making you question patterns you previously accepted as normal, then you are ready for a deeper journey of transformation. Subscribe to this channel, activate the notification bell, because this is just the beginning of an exploration that can completely revolutionize your understanding of masculinity, personal power, and existential fulfillment. Don't let this awakening be just a fleeting moment. Make it the catalyst for definitive change in your life. Pornography, which has become the most consumed drug in the modern world, is particularly devastating because it combines sexual gratification with hyper-intensified visual stimulation. It hijacks the brain's reward system in a way that natural sexuality never could. It's like comparing a small fire lit with natural wood to a fire fueled by chemical fuel. The result is that a man who regularly consumes pornography is constantly reprogramming his brain to seek levels of stimulation that reality cannot offer. This creates a vicious cycle. The more pornography you consume, the more you need to feel the same satisfaction. The more you masturbate compulsively, the more you need to masturbate to feel the same relief. It is exactly the pattern of any addiction. Increasing tolerance, increased need, decreased satisfaction. But what is even more devastating is the impact this has on your ability to feel pleasure and satisfaction in normal life activities. When you constantly overstimulate your reward system with pornography and compulsive masturbation, normal activities, work, study, exercise, real relationships begin to seem dull, lacking energy, lacking purpose. Seneca spoke about this phenomenon when he said, "The man who seeks pleasure in excess loses the ability to feel pleasure in normal measure." He is referring to the progressive desensitization that happens when you abuse any form of gratification. Modern science confirms what Seneca intuited. The brains of men addicted to pornography show neurological patterns similar to those of drug addicts. There is a decrease in gray matter in areas responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and motivation. There is a dysregulation of neurotransmitters responsible for pleasure, motivation, and a sense of well-being. This means that when you indulge in pornography and compulsive masturbation, you are not just relaxing or relieving tension. You are literally reprogramming your brain to be less capable of feeling pleasure, less motivated, less focused, less disciplined. You are becoming, neurologically, a diminished version of yourself. But here is the hope. The brain has plasticity. It can be reprogrammed. Neurological patterns can be altered. Brain chemistry can be restored. But this requires discipline, consistency, and a deep understanding of what is happening. The process of sexual transmutation is not just an ancient philosophy. It is a technology of neurological reprogramming. When you stop overstimulating your reward system with pornography and compulsive masturbation and start channeling your sexual energy into constructive activities, you are literally rebuilding your brain. In the first few weeks, you may experience what experts call withdrawal syndrome. You may feel more irritable, more anxious, more depressed. This is normal. Your brain is adjusting to the artificial stimulus it has become accustomed to. It's like any detoxification process, uncomfortable at first, but transformative in the end. But as you persist, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to feel more energized in the morning. Your focus becomes sharper. Your natural motivation begins to return. Your confidence increases. Your personal magnetism intensifies. You begin to feel pleasure in activities that previously seemed dull. This is not self-suggestion. It is neurological restoration. It is the return to your brain's natural state of functioning, free from the artificial overstimulation of pornography and compulsive masturbation. Seneca said that the strong man is not he who never falls, but he who rises every time he falls. The journey of sexual transmutation is not linear. There will be relapses. There will be moments of weakness. There will be days when you feel you don't have the strength to resist impulses. But every time you resist, every time you channel your sexual energy for higher purposes, every time you transform the primitive impulse into conscious action, you are strengthening your capacity for self-mastery. You are becoming stronger, more disciplined, more integrated. True masculinity is not about denying your sexual nature. It is about consciously mastering it. It is about being able to choose when, how, and with whom to express your sexuality.
It is about using your sexual energy as fuel for your achievements, not as an escape from your responsibilities. The man who masters his sexual energy has a different presence. He radiates a form of power that cannot be faked. He has a mental clarity that cuts through confusion. He has a vital energy that inspires and attracts. He has a magnetism that does not depend on external validation. This man is not a slave to his impulses. He is not controlled by unconscious desires. He does not waste his vital energy on compulsive gratification. He is sovereign of his own nature. He is master of his own energy. He is architect of his own reality.
But this transformation does not happen by chance. It requires conscious intention, consistent discipline, and a deep understanding of the principles that govern sexual transmutation. It requires you to face your inner demons, to confront your unconscious patterns, to integrate your emotional shadows. The process begins with a decision. The decision to stop being a victim of your impulses and start being a master of your energy. This decision is not made once and forgotten. It is made every day, every hour, every moment you feel the impulse arise. Every time you feel compulsive sexual desire arise, you have a choice. You can react automatically, as you always have, giving in to the impulse and wasting your energy. Or you can respond consciously, recognizing the impulse, understanding its emotional origin, and channeling its energy for constructive purposes. The first option is easy in the moment, but devastating in the long run. The second option is difficult in the moment, but transformative in the long run. The difference between men who remain slaves to their impulses and men who become masters of their energy lies in the ability to consistently choose the second option. Seneca teaches us that strength does not come from physical capacity, but from an indomitable will. Indomitable will is not something you are born with. It is something you develop through the consistent practice of self-mastery. And there is no area of life where self-mastery is more important and more transformative than in the area of sexuality. When you develop sexual self-mastery, you develop a form of power that permeates all other areas of your life. You become more disciplined at work. You become more focused in your studies. You become more consistent in your exercise. You become more present in your relationships. This happens because self-mastery is a transferable ability. When you strengthen your ability to resist sexual impulses, you are strengthening your ability to resist all types of destructive impulses. You are developing what the ancients called willpower and moderns call self-control. But sexual self-mastery is not just about resisting impulses. It is about transforming them. It is about using sexual energy as fuel for your achievements. It is about discovering that the same energy you wasted on compulsive gratification can be channeled to create, to build, to achieve, to transcend. When you master your sexual energy, you don't become less sexual. You become more sexual in the highest sense of the word. You become capable of expressing your sexuality with more intensity, more passion, more presence, more love. You become capable of using your sexual energy to create deeper connections, more meaningful experiences, more extraordinary achievements. But this transformation does not happen by chance. It requires conscious intention, consistent discipline, and a deep understanding of the principles that govern sexual transmutation. It requires you to face your inner demons, to confront your unconscious patterns, to integrate your emotional shadows. The process begins with a decision. The decision to stop being a victim of your impulses and start being a master of your energy. This decision is not made once and forgotten. It is made every day, every hour, every moment you feel the impulse arise. Every time you feel compulsive sexual desire arise, you have a choice. You can react automatically, as you always have, giving in to the impulse and wasting your energy. Or you can respond consciously, recognizing the impulse, understanding its emotional origin, and channeling its energy for constructive purposes. The first option is easy in the moment, but devastating in the long run. The second option is difficult in the moment, but transformative in the long run.
The difference between men who remain slaves to their impulses and men who become masters of their energy lies in the ability to consistently choose the second option. Seneca teaches us that strength does not come from physical capacity, but from an indomitable will. Indomitable will is not something you are born with. It is something you develop through the consistent practice of self-mastery. And there is no area of life where self-mastery is more important and more transformative than in the area of sexuality. When you develop sexual self-mastery, you develop a form of power that permeates all other areas of your life. You become more disciplined at work. You become more focused in your studies. You become more consistent in your exercise. You become more present in your relationships. This happens because self-mastery is a transferable ability. When you strengthen your ability to resist sexual impulses, you are strengthening your ability to resist all types of destructive impulses. You are developing what the ancients called willpower and moderns call self-control. But sexual self-mastery is not just about resisting impulses. It is about transforming them. It is about using sexual energy as fuel for your achievements. It is about discovering that the same energy you wasted on compulsive gratification can be channeled to create, to build, to achieve, to transcend. When you master your sexual energy, you don't become less sexual. You become more sexual in the highest sense of the word. You become capable of expressing your sexuality with more intensity, more passion, more presence, more love. You become capable of using your sexual energy to create deeper connections, more meaningful experiences, more extraordinary achievements.